So today we're going to be going over Kohl's and we're going to look at their financials. Today I'm Luis, I'm the presenter for the day. This is my final project for the semester. I hope you guys enjoy. Kohl's can be described as an omni-channel retailer that they focus on bringing great clothes, great products to great customers, focusing on the customer experience. They want to make sure when a customer walks in, they're greeted properly, they enjoy their experience so that they come back and shop some more, spend some more money. And then on the next slide here, we see their 2025 versus their 2024 metrics. We can see they did lose some in the gross profit, and then they did make less sales. So clearly they're on a downward slope this year. So we'll see if they can bounce back. Their percentage of the gross profit dropped about 4%, which is definitely noticeable. If you're an investor, you're looking at that and you're asking, how can we change that? How can we change that for next year? When you look at the current ratio, 1.08 versus 1.32, clearly they're less liquidity, they have less assets, more liabilities. They need to get that down, they need to get that figured out to come back up to where they were, but I mean 1.08 is not terrible. Debt to equity ratio, they got less debt, but also less equity. But it more or less stayed the same, not much change. If I'm an investor, I'm not taking too much into it, but 2.57 is kind of high in general. And then here we look at the graph, we can see the difference in between 2024, 2025, the steady drop. We'll see if they can bounce back next year or if they're going to stay on a steady decline. Steady decline, bad for investors. They're not going to want to like it. If it goes up, maybe the stock will go up. And then here we take a look at the current ratio. Dropped a little bit, less liquidity, but I mean still not at a terrible level. Debt to equity more or less the same, very small difference. And then here we compare it to a big competitor, which is Dillard's. Dillard's here, they made less gross profit sales and less profit and less sales, but their gross profit margin is not looking that bad. It's about 6% down compared to Kohl's. So Kohl's is taking the point on that one. They are making more money per sale, and their current ratio though is a lot higher by Dillard's. You can see they have about 2,300 assets with only 800 worth of liabilities. If you're an investor, you're seeing that that's a safe bet, that's a safe stock to buy. If anything happens, they have the liquidity to take action compared to Kohl's, which I mean it's not terrible, but it's definitely not a 2.84. When you compare their debt to equity ratio, you can see that Dillard's is doing honestly a lot better. If you're an investor, you're looking at that, you're like, okay, they're not digging themselves into a hole that they won't be able to get out of. Unlike Kohl's, which clearly they need to invest some of that gross profit margin they're earning into the debt so they can bring that down. And then here we have a graph with the gross profit margin, how we're comparing Kohl's and Dillard's. Kohl's is honestly higher, which is great for them. They should use some of that to bring some of their other aspects up alongside that. Like their debt, they need to start paying that off with this and using those profit for a good reason. And then when we compare the current ratio, you can see Dillard's takes the point on that one very easily, almost 3 times as much liquidity. Here, debt to equity ratio, they also take the point. They owe a lot less than Kohl's. And here we just summarize what we talked about. We go into detail on the stock about how Dillard's stock has been still doing bad this year, but not nearly as bad as Kohl's. Kohl's looks like it's like plummeted this year, honestly. I'll show you guys in the next slide so you guys can take a better look. But other than that, it's all just the stuff I've been talking about, summarizing it. And then here, my recommendation for Kohl's would be to take into account their gross profit margin, use that to bring up their liquidity, pay some of their liabilities, and then from there, they could honestly get in better shape and be a better competitor to Dillard's. And then here we have the Kohl's stock 67% down. Isn't that crazy? Now we'll compare it to the Dillard stock, which is honestly only 8% down. I mean, not even the full 10. If you round it, 9%, but I mean, it looks a lot better, has its ups and downs, unlike Kohl's, which is just a plummet. And then here we have my resources. We have This side is the Kohl's resources, this side is the Dillard's resources. If anybody needs to fact check it, I'll go ahead and leave them as links. Have a nice rest of your day, guys. See you later.